Hey, Prime members. Are you tired of ads interfering with your favorite podcasts? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free podcasts. That's amazon.com/ad-free podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Bienvenido al podcast de The Way. Si quieres aprender inglés y hablar con confianza, estás en el sitio correcto. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a mejorar su inglés y alcanzar sus objetivos. Visita nuestra web theway.es para conocer más sobre nuestros cursos online desde A2 hasta C1 y descubre cómo podemos ayudarte a avanzar en tu aprendizaje. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen Language Pair cómodamente desde casa.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Real Life, Real English. And today we are joined by Ben from To The Point English with Ben, and he's Ben. Welcome,
Hi.
Ben.
Thank you very much, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be here.
Nice. So, Ben, I think the majority of our audience probably know you from your YouTube videos already, but what does the audience need to know about you that they wouldn't know through your videos? Tell us a little bit of your background.
Maybe the people will know me from my YouTube videos, but yeah, I'm an English teacher. Obviously, they know that. I've been teaching English for 22 years, but I'm English. I was born in London, well, just on the outskirts of London, a place called Romford, which is not very, people wouldn't have visited. It's not very touristy. You wouldn't have visited it. But when I was quite young, I moved with my family to a village in Cambridgeshire, which is a pretty quaint village. And then, went to university, and then cutting a long story short, I came to Spain when I was about 26, and I've been teaching English ever since. So that's about 22 years. So that's giving my age away. But and very happy in Spain. I've lived in different places in Spain, and happy teaching English. I started my YouTube channel during the pandemic, and started focusing on exam preparation, Cambridge English exam preparation, and enjoying the journey so far. So yeah.
Ideal. I mean, for those listening, Ben does specialize in the Cambridge exams, and you can tell from the way he just introduced himself there. I mean, you gave the perfect answer for the "where are you from" question. A pretty quaint village. I mean, there's some really cool vocabulary there. Do you want to explain the pretty and quaint?
Quaint. I laughed a little bit when I said the word quaint, because it is probably the most used word when people answer that question. Even if they don't live in a quaint or pretty village. I really did live in a quaint village, but I think some people just want to use that word because, pretty is like attractive, but quaint, it's a very particular word that we often use when we're referring to small towns or villages which have a certain charm. You can have quaint villages in Spain, I guess, but I think it's quite an English or British thing. Like you imagine the little thatched cottages, or maybe a church and a river, which my village in England has all of that. And it's just a certain charm that's difficult to define with other words. And quaint in the Cambridge English exam, you want to use vocabulary to impress the examiners, and that's usually the first question. Now it's where do you live? So many people, and if you don't live in a quaint village, you can say, I live in a nondescript industrial city, which is not at all quaint. You can still use the word, but just using it in a negative sense, for example.
Yeah. And the questions that come up there are like, where do you live, or where are you from? And I always like to teach my students to use like the passive there, because it's a great way of getting some quite advanced grammar into your answer. And it's an answer that you can kind of memorize as well, which is, I was born in where I have lived all my life. And then you've got some present perfect in there as well. So from such a basic question, such as where do you live, where are you from, you can actually, you can show the examiners plural in the Cambridge exams. You can show them that you do have a little bit above.
Yeah, I think that's the idea. Is as you said, I was born and raised, or born and bred. Just if you have a couple of words or expressions or grammar structures up your sleeve for that first question or the first couple of questions, which you're not always sure in the C1 Advanced, you may not get that question, but it's the most common question. Then that's gonna you're impressing the examiners, and also for yourself as you're going to be nervous in an exam situation, and if you have something that you know is going to get you marks and impress the examiners to start with, and it will make you feel a little bit more confident and calm, and make a good first impression. But I do recommend you try to sound natural, because sometimes I see students rehearse. It's a very obviously practiced and rehearsed answer.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit too robotic, and the examiners can tell immediately when the candidate is just repeating a very rehearsed answer. So you want to get a balance, but yeah.
Yeah. And what kind of tips do you give to your students to sound natural?
Well, it depends on the level, but at C2, I have a lot of C2 proficiency, so that students who are preparing for the C2 proficiency exam. And in that case, I recommend that they don't prepare an answer. Again, maybe you can have a couple of expressions in mind that you might want to use or you think may be useful, but at C2 level, you really should sound natural. So don't prepare an answer, just try to be spontaneous. And it is a bit of a performance. You are kind of acting in some way, because it's not a natural situation. You want to sound natural, but it's not a natural situation. You're sitting in a room with probably two strangers, and even your partner is probably a stranger, and you have a time limit, and you're being evaluated. So it's very difficult to really be natural, but you want to sound natural. So become an actor for a few minutes and just exaggerate maybe a little bit. But it's as I said, it's a balance between trying to demonstrate your level, but also just trying to relax to a certain extent and just give natural answers.
Be yourself and trust in yourself, I think, is one thing. You know, a lot of these students, they don't trust in their ability. They have the level, but they're still going into the exam extremely nervous, which is understandable. However, there's students that I've had, and there's absolutely no chance that they're going to fail the exam, because they've got that level, and it's getting them to trust that they have that level, have the confidence in themselves, so that they can go into the exam, not arrogantly, but knowing that they have enough inside themselves to be able to produce what they need to pass the exam. So definitely. Obviously you're focused on YouTube. So tell us a little bit about your YouTube journey and how you got into YouTube videos.
Yeah, funnily enough, it was my mum who first suggested, because I'd been teaching English for let me think, about 17 or 18 years before I made my first YouTube video. So I had a lot of experience teaching English with all different levels, different age groups, and a lot of students who were preparing for the Cambridge English exam. So I had the experience, but I think my mum just came across I think it might have been Lucy, English with Lucy. She sent me a YouTube video saying, "You could do that." Yeah, I was right, Mum. Of course I can. Whatever. And I kind of just dismissed it. It was nice for my mum to have faith in me and think I could do something like that. But I thought, no, I can't. And I can't do what Lucy does. Lucy's unique. She's amazing. But when the pandemic hit and we were all in lockdown in Madrid, it was a very strict lockdown. I was living in Madrid at the time. Wow. I couldn't go out. I had a dog, fortunately, so I could walk the dog 3 times a day. But suddenly I had time on my hands, and I thought, and I'd consume a lot of YouTube. I like watching YouTube videos for some English videos I was watching at the time, but also I have other hobbies like running, playing the guitar, and I was absorbing YouTube videos. So I thought, I'm going to give it a go. So I came up with I think my first video was how to learn English. So I started very general. It's like, I think I gave 5 tips on how to learn English, and it was really, really awful. It's just, I can't watch it now. And I would say my first 50 videos were embarrassing. This is awful. And I was humiliating myself in front of the 2 viewers I had at the time and 0 subscribers. But I knew I could do better. So I when you do start getting people from different countries all over the world watching your videos, maybe one video suddenly got up to 100 views, and I thought, wow, that's 100 people I don't know in different countries around the world watching a video that I've made. It intrigued me, and I found it extremely rewarding. So it kind of hooked me, and I wanted to get better. I wanted to get better at presenting, at editing, and content, and so I just kept making videos and slowly getting a few more views, a few more subscribers, and I just found it very rewarding. YouTube is not really, doesn't pay much money, so unless you're really a big YouTuber, so that's not the objective. But I did make one video which changed things a little bit. It was called "How to Prepare for the Cambridge English Exams." I think the B2 first, C1 Advanced, and C2 Proficiency. And it didn't explode, but I noticed it just started doing a little bit better than the other videos. My other videos were about grammar, vocabulary, how to learn English in general, which were doing okay, but nothing special. But that one was just getting a bit more, more views, more engagement, and I realized that there was a demand for help.
Yeah.
There were students that needed help with the Cambridge English exam preparation, and there are other YouTubers out there who are doing a good job with that, but not that many, especially for C2 Proficiency, for the really high level. So I decided to focus more and more on Cambridge English exam preparation. But still, I make vocabulary videos too, which are good that can help anyone who's learning English, but also, and some grammar videos. But really the focus is on Cambridge English exam preparation. And so yeah, that's how it's been. It was a strange experience, because for the first year and a half, it was just growing very slowly. And then I think it was in 2023, I can't remember, it suddenly took off. It was like going crazy. I was getting thousands of subscribers a day. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to get 1 million subscribers in no time. But it very, as quickly as it took off or spiked, it collapsed again. So it just went back down. It was just I don't know what happened. The algorithm made a mistake, I think. So I got a lot of subscribers in a couple of weeks, and then went back to as I am now, just growing slowly. And it's fine for me. I don't really want 1 million subscribers. It's too much pressure if you have 1 million subscribers waiting for your videos to come out.
I think it's crazy nowadays because of social media. We look at numbers such as, like, you're over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's like 2 times Wembley.
Yeah.
Fill Wembley twice.
Yeah.
And that's your
it's
audience.
mad.
And when you think of it like that, the reach that social media allows us to have, it's like we have that responsibility to up our quality of content and supply this audience with what they want. And I'm just going to take you back to 3 things that you said that I made notes of. One, it's a great way of explaining it. During lockdown, I was absorbing YouTube. Like, in English, we love to use verbs that aren't the actual verb. So instead of saying watching YouTube, I was absorbing YouTube. Why did you choose that word?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it's more than just watching. It's an active action, but I think absorbing really expresses, it's more emphatic, and it expresses that idea of taking in what I was watching. It wasn't just watching it. I'm emphasizing that I was really involved in it, and the videos were having some kind of influence on me. I think that's probably part of the idea. If you absorb information or absorb what someone is saying, you're taking it in. You're not just sort of watching it or listening to it and then going on. It's you're internalizing it more, I think. So I think I used it obviously I didn't consciously think about using it, and that's why this is very useful. I think it's I think I just used it because I wanted to emphasize how much I was watching and how important, how sort of hooked on YouTube I was a little bit, and how positive I find it.
Yeah, and that was actually the next thing that I wrote down was it hooked me.
Did I say
and
that?
again, to hook something, again, we would normally say like to become addicted, maybe to get hooked on something.
Yeah. Yeah, you can think literally
yeah.
a hook. Yeah, I mean, a hook is Captain Hook. Everyone knows
Captain Hook.
or a fishing hook. It gets you, and you can't. It doesn't release you. You can't let it go. So it's sort of a metaphorical sense or figurative sense. Yeah, you're addicted to it in a certain way. I mean, it can have a negative connotation if you're hooked on something bad, but if you can be hooked on something good. You can be even hooked on a person if you're really infatuated by someone. Yeah.
Oh, a lovely word. That's one of my favorite words is infatuated.
Yeah.
I remember my English teacher in secondary school teaching it to me. And I just remember at the time, obviously when you're young, and I was probably 14. So you go through those teenage emotions and trying to find partners and that. And I was like, am I infatuated or am I in love?
Yeah, I think in English, we do use quite, I suppose in all languages, but I think English, we do have some very expressive vocabulary, perhaps because we're not, by nature, we're quite reserved compared to other nationalities. Maybe we need the vocabulary to express ourselves, but we use quite emphatic, expressive words. I mean, I think we both speak Spanish, and there are those equivalents, but I don't know. Yeah. I think we tend to, and with the pronunciation, we tend to be quite expressive with the vocabulary.
Yeah. And then the last thing you said when you were describing your YouTube channel, and all of a sudden it took off. It's a great phrasal verb, and obviously we both teachers, so we teach from Cambridge Books. In the B1, the B1 Pet books, they teach take off, but they teach it for remove an item of clothing or an aeroplane takes off. But here you obviously were using it to say that your YouTube channel took off, which just means I picture it as an aeroplane. You know, the aeroplane's going along the runway, and then all of a sudden it takes off. It launches into the stratosphere.
So when something has a lot of success, or it goes in an upward trajectory. So I mean that's one of the interesting things with phrasal verbs. Take off could be considered B1 vocabulary if we're going to categorize it, but the same phrasal verb with a different meaning could be considered much more advanced. Like when something like my YouTube channel takes off, I don't know if it would be C1 or what, but it's depending on the use and the meaning and the context, different vocabulary can have different levels. So you may find the same phrasal verb in different books, but used in different ways. So it's useful.
I like to teach my students because they obviously they're quite nervous when they go from, let's say, a B2 to a C1 class. They've just got their B2 certification, and they're moving up into a C1 class, and they think that you have to have a C1 level to enter this C1 class. And I teach them not to worry about too much of the advanced vocabulary quite yet, but try and think of different ways of saying things, because obviously on the mark sheets for the exams, they're getting graded on being able to produce a wide range of vocabulary. It will say a wide range of advanced vocabulary. So if they're able to describe something, instead of saying take off, as in my YouTube channel took off, they can say it that way. But then later on, when they're explaining the same thing, they can say that it got momentum and become a success. It's two different ways of saying things. And that's what I think they get extra points for being able to do, instead of repeating the same vocabulary.
Definitely, yeah. You don't want to repeat vocabulary ever, if possible, in the exam. I mean, sometimes it's inevitable. It's impossible not to repeat a word. But I highly recommend that as part of the preparation for the exam, and this is good for your English in general, learn synonyms of common words. And I've made YouTube videos on this, I think, synonyms for the 10 most common, or 10 common adjectives, not the most common.
Mm-hmm.
So the most, I think what always comes up is in every exam, you will have to say the word, or it'll be useful to say the word important. It's very important. And sometimes I just hear students saying it's very important, it's very important, you have so many synonyms for very important, like it's essential, crucial, pivotal, of paramount importance. So just learn a few for those. And in your speaking, if possible, it's more difficult when you're speaking to think, to stop and think. But in your writing, as you said, every time you write an adjective or an adverb or anything, just think, do I know a more impressive synonym, especially to avoid repetition, but also just to get more marks. And also with the grammar, I mean, you may think, can I express this idea using a conditional sentence or in the passive voice? Would that be better? Or left the sentence? Just think twice before you write the sentence. And that comes with preparation, because you have very little time and you're under pressure. But if you do that in your preparation, you'll become more instinctive. You're just always thinking, how can I express this idea in a more sophisticated, impressive way? Because you don't want to get those marks.
And I think that comes from, like you said, preparation is one, and then repetition, as in mock exams, doing past papers, practicing with people like yourself, where you know, the internet has given us the opportunity to be able to book a session with yourself and practice the exam and get feedback. One thing we do in our academy, and I love it when I hear the teachers do it, they ban certain words, and then they give forfeits if you use that word. And one of them is important. They ban the word important. Another one is because, that they repeat because a million times. And then fun and funny, a common one. So they write on the board, today's banned word is, and then what it is, and you're not allowed to say it during the class. And if you do, you get a forfeit.
That's good, forces them to think. Yeah, it's okay in an exam to use the word important or very important. It's good, it's fine. But don't repeat it, and don't and try to use it's good to use in impressive alternatives. But that idea of banning a word in a class to force students to come up with others or alternatives, it's a good idea.
And what it does as well, because we've put this forfeit on it, the other students are listening because they want to catch out their classmates. So they're listening to what their classmates are saying, and if they do say the word important, they're like, hey, you said important. So it gets them more involved as well, which is really cool. So I'm going to move on to real life, real English, and we're going to talk about something that we can use the phrase hooked on. So before the show, you said that you're starting to run again. You've taken a bit of time out from running, but it's a passion of yours. And it's, the people that know me will be laughing now, because any chance that I get to bring running into a conversation, I do it. So you're my favorite guest so far, Ben.
Great.
for suggesting running.
Right.
So let's talk about your running career. Let's say you said before the show that you use running to get into the right frame of mind and to be with your thoughts and things. Talk a little bit about when you go for a run, the sort of things you're saying to yourself. Why is it so important to be alone with those thoughts when you're running?
Well, I started running about 8 or 9 years ago. I was getting a bit chubby, a bit overweight, and I thought I need to do something. I wasn't really doing anything. So I started running, and at first it was hell. It was a struggle. Every time I went out, my muscles were aching. I was dripping with sweat. I couldn't breathe. But I forced myself to continue. And then I guess this happened to you. I don't know if maybe you've been running all your life, but there was this moment, or I think it was just one run. I thought, this actually feels good. Now I'm not suffering. I mean, you still suffer, but it's in a different way. It's like and then you can start running longer distances. And when you start running, I don't know, probably over 5 kilometers at the time. And so you're out there for about over half an hour. It's something happens. I don't know the science behind it, but you have time because you're not distracted by your phone, you're not distracted by people. Usually, I mean, if you can find a nice quiet place to run, and the endorphins release, and you, for me, I start becoming more creative. I start thinking about, at the time, for example, class preparation, what I could do in a class, and it was a really precious time for me. And I started running longer and longer distances until quite early. I think after a year and a half, I ran my first marathon, my first and only marathon until now, because I really did get hooked on running, and I needed I ran a couple of 10Ks. I think I did a half marathon before the marathon, and then I really wanted to run a marathon to prove to myself that I could do it, and to run it, not to stop and walk at any moment. For me, it's very important that I ran very slowly at the end. Those basically people could have walked past me, but I was technically running.
But you were still running. That's the important thing.
Exactly, and that the thing I think that a lot of people don't realize about marathon preparation. I know you've run even longer distances. It's not really the race that's important. It's the months of preparation where you're going out every morning and running sometimes for 2 hours. And I learned a lot about myself during the marathon preparation. And yeah, there's something that happens. People talk about the runner's high, where you just feel really good, but also you feel very lucid. I think I felt sharp, and I felt it doesn't need to be 2 hours running. I think that can happen in the shorter distances. And now, as you said, I took a break from running, and I'm getting back into it now. And I run 5 or 6 kilometers. I'm slowly building up the distance, but I feel so good. Not always while I'm running. Sometimes I'm suffering. It's a good suffering. And when I finish, I think it's something people say, you can regret not going for a run, but you never regret going for a run. Maybe you really don't want to. You wake up in the morning, you think, oh, today I can't be bothered. It's cold and wet. But when you do it, you always feel good afterwards. And there's something, it does something to you, which I think it's so beneficial for the rest of your day. And of course, physically, it's good for this cardio exercise is good for your body and your health, but for your mental health too. Psychologically, it's huge for me.
Yeah, my colleagues always know when I haven't run.
Oh, really?
They always say to me, "You haven't run today, have you?" I'm like, "How do you know?" They're like, "You're a different person."
A bit grumpy.
More stressed.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed as well, when I haven't run, I'm noisier when I do things. So instead of putting the cup down softly on the table, I'll be slamming it on the table. I don't realize, but people have told me that when I haven't run, I make more noise in the presence of people just doing certain things, which is a crazy thing. And one thing I've noticed when I'm out there running, and you mentioned it, is that you have all of these fantastic ideas for videos, for business. Think you forget things that you have to do later on. You're like, must remember that. How do you remember the things that you think when you're running?
That's a good question. I don't always remember them. Sometimes I forget them, and it's really frustrating. I mean, because as I said, I started my YouTube channel during the pandemic, so it was quite difficult to run. But when we were allowed out, and I started running longer distances again, and was coming up with some great ideas for videos, which I thought it's a bit like when you're going to sleep at night and you start to think of things amazing. You have amazing ideas, and then you wake up in the morning, you think, I know I had a really good idea, but I can't remember it. And so if I think it's a really good idea, then it sticks with me, and I kind of force myself to remember it. But I don't usually take my phone with me when I'm running, because I want to disconnect completely. So it's just, like when I was running 2 hours, sometimes I'd have an idea after the first 45 minutes, and then an hour and 15 minutes later, I would have forgotten about it. So unfortunately, I don't remember all of them. But I think the good ones, if I have a really good idea for a video or for a way to explain a chunk of grammar or something, or an idea for a course, then it will stick.
Mhm.
This, I mean, it sounds very pretentious, but it reminds me of an interview with Paul McCartney, and because Paul McCartney has written thousands of songs in his life, but most of them he forgot. He never finished them. He just never recorded them, or maybe just a melody or a guitar riff. But he says if they're good enough, he will remember them. So it's not like he regrets some potential hits that he forgot. No, he's sure that the really good ones stay with him. So it's a bit like that with me when I'm running. If I come up with an idea and I forget it, it probably wasn't that good anyway. So I don't beat myself up about it too much.
That's a lovely way to think about it, because we had this conversation. I mean, my team in the academy, they're fantastic, and they're on the receiving end of my ideas. So when I'm out there running, and an idea comes to me, because I'm in the mountains, I take my phone for safety.
Right.
And I get the phone out and I'm recording a video while running of my idea, and then I send it to the group. So they're on the receiving end of my ideas. And this podcast actually came from one of those ideas of setting up a podcast for English teaching, and then it all expanded from there. You mentioned just now that you speak Spanish. So this is an interesting question. When you're out there running, are the conversations in your head in Spanish or in English?
I think in English, but to be honest, because people have asked me about, not the same question, but they've asked me if I dream in Spanish sometimes or in English, but I don't remember. I don't know if people have different types of brains, but I don't remember words or having. You can dream about conversations, but I don't remember actual words or the words of the conversations. It's more like the idea.
The concept.
I think it's the same when I'm running. I mean, maybe when an idea comes up, I don't think it comes up in words, but then if I'm thinking of how to practically make a YouTube video, then it would be in English. But I don't know. I'm gonna pay more attention next time I'm running to see if I'm thinking because sometimes I do think in Spanish, because there's certain, and it's, as I said, I don't really think in words, but then sometimes I realize when I'm sort of becoming more conscious of what I've been thinking, because it's quite sort of unconscious thoughts sometimes. And I think I kind of want to express the idea in Spanish, or the output is in Spanish for some reason. I don't know why. What about you? Do you think in Spanish?
Yeah, so it's something that I've picked myself up on recently. Is that if for example I'm going into a Spanish business meeting and I'm thinking about that meeting, then I'll be thinking about it in Spanish, because I know that the people that are in the meeting are Spanish, and I didn't realize that I was thinking about it in Spanish until recently. The normal day-to-day conversations they're in English, but like you said, it's not words that are coming to you. It's like a concept, an image of something, and then it's up to us to put it into words and make it reality. And that's a very strange observation to have. The fact that there's no words coming to us. It's an idea which hasn't been expressed in words quite yet. I'd like to expand on that one somehow.
People. I'm sure people have studied that. I guess that the origin of language, because obviously we had ideas before we could articulate them using language. I guess humans, before we were sophisticated enough to be able to communicate with words, I don't know if we were humans then or what. I don't know, but we could express we just had ideas or concepts. I don't know, but I think we're still, as I said, when you're dreaming, or when I dream, I never remember actual conversations I've had. It's just the feeling or the idea of a conversation or an interaction or something.
That's cool. I like that. I'm going to make a note of this, and I like to do running meditations, where you take an idea or you take a concept, and that's what you focus on for the whole time that you're training. And it could be something as simple as the race that you've got coming up, and you want to go into the race with a certain mindset. So you just focus on that idea for the whole time that you're running, but you watch every other thought and feeling and idea that's coming to you and trying to distract you from focusing on that one thing. And it's a really interesting experiment. If you haven't tried running meditations, there's some quite cool YouTube videos out there that explain it, and it's all about silencing that mind. And that inner conversation. It's really cool. You mentioned just now that you ran a marathon. Which marathon did you run?
It was the Madrid Marathon, because I was living in Madrid at the time, so I thought I'd just sign up for that. I got the metro to the starting line and walked home. But yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, I don't know if you run the Madrid Marathon?
No, I haven't done the Madrid. A friend of mine did it. Is it called the Rock and Roll Marathon?
Yes,
Marathon.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
He did that one, and he said it was just one of the best races that he's ever participated in, purely because of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Everyone was on the streets, the bands.
Yeah. It's true, of course, but I remember at the beginning, you have a lot of people lining the streets, and it's amazing. You feel, I mean, you're with hundreds of other runners or thousands of other runners, but you feel special. You feel like and sometimes people do read your name and say, "Come on, Ben." I'm like, "Who's that?"
Yeah.
Like, oh, and it makes you feel, really gives you a boost. But probably this happens in many marathons. There's one part where suddenly the crowd starts to dissipate, and you may just have one or two. Or I remember in this marathon, it was just after the halfway mark, and the sun was out. There was no shade, and just a long straight road, and there were no spectators, nobody cheering me on or us on, and all the runners are sort of, because when you start, you're all running together, but as the marathon progresses, you kind of you separate, and you're running on your own basically. And that really hit me. I felt very alone and very tired all of a sudden, because you start with a lot of energy and you're very enthusiastic, and but then at that moment I thought, oh, I'm in trouble here, because the sun was beating down. There was nobody cheering me on or us on. I felt really alone. But then as you get close to the end, then the crowd starts to build up again, and yeah, it's a nice. I can't compare it with other marathons, but it is quite there are lots of hills. It's not flat. No, Madrid is quite a hilly city. So I was telling you before a bit. That was the year before the pandemic. So So I'd already signed up for the next year's marathon in Madrid, but that was cancelled because it was right in the middle of the pandemic. And I'd also signed up for the Valencia Marathon, which apparently is one of the best because it's very flat. And my objective, I think it was a bit of an optimistic and unrealistic objective, was to try and beat the 3-minute marathon, but I don't think I was very far from that. But 3-hour marathon. 3 minute would be good. But I'd love to just run maybe one day. I don't know if I'm too old now, but maybe I'll get back to that kind of level. But I wanted to run a flat marathon because it's a different experience, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're never too old, Ben. I keep telling my parents, and my parents are in their early 60s, and they moved to Spain and completely changed their lives when they moved here. They become healthier, they took up sport, and they're both now really keen cyclists. And they'll ride anywhere between 250 to 400 kilometers a week. Wow. They'll think nothing of getting on their bikes and heading off and riding 100, 120 kilometers on a Saturday. And I keep telling them that if they've got that mindset that they can still do it, then keep doing it. And no, I agree. Their friends that have come and gone, and they say they're too old to ride now. I truly believe that it is a mindset that if you tell yourself you're too old, you're probably too old. So
do you know? Sorry to quickly, but do you know Rich Roll?
Yes.
Heard of Rich Roll? Yeah.
He
was a huge inspiration to me. Well, I read his book because I started running 8 years ago. I was just, it must have been 7. I was 41, so I was, middle-aged, I guess. But I read his book and I'd seen a couple of his videos, but his podcast was very small at the time. But I think he was about 43 when he started running these ultra distance, ultra marathons, and he's still, I think he's still running. I assume in his late 50s now. So he was a huge inspiration. And I agree with you. It is a mindset. When I started running, as I said, I just wanted to lose a bit of weight, but I got a bit hooked. And then it changed. I started drinking less alcohol. I started eating much more healthily. Started meditating. There was a shift in my mindset, and I was, and I felt I was 10 years younger. I had lots more energy, and it's great. So I'd love to get back to that kind of level, but I'm doing okay for my age. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a mindset.
And it's consistency as well. You know, it is difficult to get out there, and we can make the comparison here to learning English. Like, it is difficult. We're not trying to hide the fact that learning a language is hard, but so is going to the gym day in, day out. And you go to the gym once, you start doing some bicep curls, you're not going to have massive biceps. However, if you go to the gym 6 months in a row and you start doing your bicep curls and some ab crunches and everything else, you'll notice the difference in your physique. And it's the same with English learning. People expect that they're going to sit there and watch a couple of TikToks a day, and that's enough for them to improve dramatically over a short period of time. Whereas they really need to have this goal in the future, which could be a Cambridge exam, a language cert exam, or just the fact of traveling to another country and being able to interact with other people. And then having that consistency to be able to make sure that you get to where you want to be. So Valencia Marathon you mentioned just now, and I can't move on without mentioning my experience in Valencia. So we went to Valencia last year, December, so 2024. And it was a group of my friends. We all had it as like our goal race. And I don't run on tarmac. I'm a trail runner, and I like to do the ultra distances. So this was my first ever marathon on the flat, and I wanted to make it my first and only marathon on the flat. So I had the same goal as what you had in mind, which was the 3-hour mark. I think if you can run a 3-hour marathon, then that's a very respectable time. And that was the plan. Now, leading into the marathon, my training was not the best. I had too many things going on. You know those moments in your life where you say yes to too many things, thinking that it will be fine, and then it all catches up at you at once. That's what happened going into this marathon. And obviously, they'd suffered from the floodings last year as well. Right. So we arrive at the start line of this marathon, and the atmosphere and the feeling in the air was something I'd never felt before. You could just feel the emotion. And then they played the Valencian anthem. And I looked around me, and there were people crying.
Really?
And it was so emotional. And then the marathon starts and you're off, and you're like, whoa, this is something special. And we're running in a group. And for those that haven't run in these major races before, there's always pacers. So there's people that have flags coming out of their back, and it says the time that they're running. So you can run with the pacer. And normally, if you get with the pacers, you're in a huge group of people. And I remember the first 5 kilometers was everyone got into a rhythm, and I was listening, and all of a sudden it was like every single footprint was in rhythm. Right. And again, it made the hairs on my arms stand up. And then you've got the crowds, and people are holding signs, and then there's music going. And it was just the most spectacular experience I think I've ever had in a race. And I managed to stay with a pacer. And then the last 5 or 10 kilometers, I still had a fair bit of energy left, so I could push on and break the 3-hour time.
Congratulations. That's a fantastic achievement. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's a big tick next to 3-hour marathon done. I don't need to go back and repeat. But what was special about it, not just tick on 3 hours, was the fact that you were part of something very special that year. And I think everyone that took part in the marathon will agree that there was something in the air that everybody felt that year, and it's really difficult for me to put into words as well.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing experience. But do you think that could happen in doing another activity? Because I think I've never had that, because that's a very unique moment and to be in that place at that time. Obviously, because of what had happened with the floods, it was a particular feeling. But for me, running and marathon running, and I've never run more than a marathon, as you have, like longer distances, but I think these are called races, but I don't think you don't have that competitive feeling or nature. Everyone's kind of helping each other and encouraging each other, and you're interested in your own time and you want to beat your personal best or whatever, but it's not about beating the person next to you. And maybe if you're in the sort of a really competitive athlete, professional, but usually it's just that everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's got the same feeling, the same objective. It's not about beating the guy next to you. It's about helping them, and it's about encouraging them, and it's a really positive experience, I think, in general.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think you get that in other, so maybe cycling, I don't know, but that other sports or other activities, I don't think they have the same feeling. The same.
Yeah, it's definitely something that us amateurs feel more than the professionals or the elites. I'm very lucky that I've been able to compete with like the local amateurs and things, and it's a different atmosphere there. It is very competitive. You're still friendly, on the trail. Things happen where a competitor might fall over, and if you're following that competitor and he's in the lead and you're second, you're not jumping over him and carrying on. You're helping them up. You're making sure they're okay. If they're not, you're almost sacrificing your own race to be able to call the emergency or whatever. But it is something very special when a group of people enter something with the same goal, which is to complete it. And you've got that shared experience. And it's lovely. And you mentioned, we'll give the viewers some vocabulary here. So you mentioned in Madrid, that there was a point where the sun was super bright. There was no excuse me, there was no fans and things, and you really struggled. And there's an expression that we use in the running world which is called "you hit the wall."
To hit the wall,
and if you hit the wall, it's like running into a brick wall, where it's like my legs aren't working, my brain and my body are disconnected. And I don't know if you've heard of the expression "to bonk."
Yes, I have heard that. Yeah. I mean, we're laughing because it has a couple of meanings in English, but in British English, at least. I'm not sure in American English, but yeah, because I think there's a word in Spanish which it's not that they use a lot for cycling and running, which I wasn't sure of the word in English actually. So I remember I had to look it up, and I think bonk came up. To bonk, it's like it's when you just can't. You lose all the energy, and you kind of it's almost impossible to continue doing the activity that you're doing, whether it's running or cycling.
So a bonk normally comes when your energy levels are depleted, and it's because you haven't been able to take on any new nutrition. And obviously, doing these sort of sports, it's extremely important to. I've paused there and laughing because before the show we were talking about the word important, and I said about how in our academy the word important is banned in certain classes, and then I went and used it. So it's crucial to be able to take on enough calories to be able to see you through the race.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to keep the nutrition topped up, so you can these energy gels. I don't know if you take the energy gels or if you prefer something more natural. I remember I did in the marathon, but I also things like almonds and dates, maybe chocolate, but you need to keep it topped up so you don't bonk, or don't hit that wall. I think at that moment that I was describing, I hadn't quite hit the wall, but it was when the initial sort of euphoria of being in a marathon and everyone cheering you on, when that had sort of died off. And I realized on my own, I think it's when I thought this is going to be more difficult. And I hit the wall a little bit later, about 10 kilometers from the end. And that was when I was just focusing on putting one foot in front of the other and just keep running. And there were people collapsing around me, literally. But there were some people overtaking me too. So some people had saved their energy till the end, but I was just focusing on just getting to the end. It's awful, but incredible at the same time. It's one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Yeah.
And to give the viewers some more vocabulary, obviously, when you're suffering like that, it's because the body is giving up in a certain way. And lots of people in marathons, especially, and when it's a hot day, they get things called cramps. And I don't know, I'm trying to think of the translation into Spanish because that's the easiest way to do it. Is it agujetas?
No, that's just aches. Agujetas is like sore muscles, but one second. I can't remember. So yes, when your muscle really tightens up and it's quite painful, and you need to stretch the muscle. It can happen when you're lying in bed. Your feet sometimes cramp up, or your calves. I think the calves, which are the muscles on the back of your legs, your lower leg, probably the most common muscle to cramp.
To cramp, yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could remember in Spanish because it happens in football quite a lot. But yeah,
well, agujetas is a really interesting one as well, actually, because I'm just thinking about how they say it in Spanish, and they say, I have, don't they? I have agujetas, tengo agujetas, which we don't say in English. We say like my muscles are sore or I'm stiff.
Yeah. Yeah, I ache. My muscles ache. If you say, "Are you aching?" You say, "My calves are aching," or "My calves are sore." But yeah, you wouldn't say, "I have aches."
Something.
It's possible, but it's not common. Yeah, it's not. Agujetas, I don't think we really have. Well, the translation is to be sore, I think. But yeah, it's not. It's different part of speech. So yeah, I'm still trying to remember what cramps is. How to say cramp?
It'll come to us at the end of the show, and we'll put it into the show notes. So you did the rock and roll marathon of Madrid, and the next topic that you wanted to speak about was music, and in particularly playing the guitar. And I think, like myself, everyone has noticed the guitar in the back of your
sorry, I don't know. It's over there,
and they're probably waiting for the guitar session to come out in English. So tell us about your guitar experience.
Well, I'm not a fantastic guitar player, but I love picking. I started playing the guitar when I was 16. My 16th birthday present. You know, if I passed my exams at school, my parents agreed to buy me an electric guitar. So,
wow.
Of course, you have also the amplifier. So I started playing then, but now I don't touch my electric. I only play acoustic. I just like to strum or finger pick the acoustic, but it's something that maybe similar to running. I find kind of very meditative in this. I don't know if you could say that, but it's something that when I've got a lot on, or I'm feeling a bit stressed or anxious, pick up the guitar and just play a song or just strum a little bit. Sometimes I sing along. I'm not a good singer, but it's just it's something to focus on. That's not, takes you away from any issues you have at that moment. And music's a big part of my life. I love listening to music, and for me, I think some people are like just listening to music and consuming music. For me, I like with other things too. I like to be proactive, to produce something. I like to play music. I wouldn't say I'm a particularly good guitarist, as I said. I don't write. I do come up with different melodies and chord sequences and sometimes lyrics, but I've never really finished a song. So, but I like producing something, not just always sort of listening passively. I prefer to be active. So, I always have the guitar in the corner, and I just pick it up 2 or 3 times a day and have a strum, and it's been part of my life for 32 years now. No,
wow,
is that 32 years? Yeah, 32 years. Well,
That's
it's
crazy.
Yeah.
So a couple things there. Obviously, we've got finger pick and strum. For those that are watching, strumming is when you play all of the strings at the same time,
Yes.
and then you play a chord, which is with your other hand, and each finger is on like a different string on the guitar. So that's strumming, where you play them all at the same time. And then finger picking is where, if you're a right-handed player, your right hand is playing each individual string individually. And then playing the different notes with your left hand. And you mentioned that you sometimes sing when you're playing the guitar as well. Tell me how you're able to split your mind down the middle, and one part of your brain is focusing on strumming or finger picking, and the other part of your brain is focusing on the lyrics and singing.
Well, I think that's the key. You're not focusing on finger picking or strumming. It becomes instinctive, and when you practice it enough, and that, I think it's an extremely good exercise for you. I think playing a musical instrument, much like learning a second or third or fourth language, I think they're very good for your brain, just to exercise your brain. You're using parts of your brain that you don't usually use. So you have to, when you're learning a new song, if it's a complicated finger picking pattern, maybe chords, difficult chords, you have to make an effort. You have to repeat it, practice it, and it's frustrating. It takes time. Even though I've been playing guitar for 32 years, there's still lots of songs I can't play, and it's difficult songs. So it's an effort. And then if you want to sing over that, then it has to become, you can't focus on it. It has to be instinctive, or as another word I can't come up with, second nature. Maybe that's another way of saying it. You're just playing your finger picking. Sometimes you have to think a little bit, but also if you know the lyrics to the song, you don't need to think too much about the lyrics. If you learn all the aspects really well, then it comes naturally. And then that's why musicians are, really good musicians, professional musicians, it's not easy to do what they do, because they're playing the instrument, they're singing the song, but not only that, they've got a feeling, they're putting emotion and intonation, and they're not just singing flat. You can sing really well, hit all the notes, but without any character, without any personality or emotion. So really good. I'm not a big fan, but Ed Sheeran, for example, I'm thinking of a modern day musician who plays guitar and sings at the same time. Or, for example, Arctic Monkeys, who I do like. I can't remember the singer, but he plays some really complicated riffs and guitar parts and sings over it. But it's not just singing; it's putting something extra, and that's, I think, what's the difference between somebody who just, like me, who just plays the guitar and sings occasionally, and someone who's got that X factor, style quality. And it's not easy, I think. And maybe relating to that, to learn in English, there are a lot of similarities between learning an instrument and learning a language, because to be able to speak fluently and well and pass a C2 proficiency Cambridge English exam, for example, you can't be consciously thinking all the time about the grammar and the vocabulary you need to use and the pronunciation. It has to come naturally. So, and that's just years of practice, really, and input and output. So just using English, and that you can't just prepare for 3 months for an exam and then use lots of really nice vocabulary and grammar in the right way in context. I guess it's possible, but it's very difficult, and it has to be sort of second nature. A lot of it, you're always going to. I think most students are always frustrated that, especially in the speaking exam, the speaking paper, that they always finish and think, "Oh, I didn't use the vocabulary I know. I didn't use all that advanced vocabulary I've been learning for the last 10 years or whatever." But we don't anyway. We don't really. We're having a conversation now. Occasionally, a nice phrase pops up, but as native speakers, we're not using all that advanced vocabulary in every sentence. It's
true.
So it just has to come naturally.
Yeah, and sometimes it's vocab that isn't advanced vocab, but there's a lesson to be had from it, which is, like you said, then popped up.
Mhm.
the vocabulary doesn't pop up. Like, where does
Yeah.
pop up come from?
Yeah.
Why do we use pop up? Because it just appears all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So I've heard athletes talk about being in the flow state, and
Mhm.
the flow state is, I think, very similar to what you described, where you're feeling it, you're in the moment, nothing's distracting you, everything seems to flow like a river in the
Mhm.
right direction. Would you describe like playing the guitar and singing very similar to
Yeah.
that?
I think so. Yeah, I think yes, I think you can get into that flow state playing an instrument. It just sometimes just playing the instrument without singing. But I think to get into the flow state, it has to be something that's quite demanding, but not too demanding. I think you have to find it's a level where it needs some kind of effort, but it gets to the point where it's not really a conscious effort. You're just it's flowing. Yeah, it's flowing. But it can't be something that's really easy. So it depends on the song you're playing, probably. If you're playing a 3-chord song, just strumming A, E, and D, for example, you're probably not going to get into that flow state. But if it's maybe a finger-picking, complicated song, but not too complicated, not where you have to really think about what you're doing all the time, you kind of, it's kind of like meditation, because everything else, you can't think about anything else. So you can't, maybe you've got a big problem in your life, or you're stressed about something, but in that moment it won't bother you because you have other things to on your mind, literally. So, well, not literally, but your mind is occupied with other things. So yeah, I think it's kind of a flow state. Yeah.
Well, I'm that annoying guitar player that can play Wonderwall, and that's about it. Which everyone has up their sleeves. But I have tried to play other stuff, and if I've got the tabs and the music in front of me, I can kind of follow the basic chords. I get into trouble when there's bar chords. I really struggle with the bar chords because they just don't sound right when I play them at the moment. But I've also tried to do the singing as well, because one day, so my wife's 7.5 months pregnant at the moment, and
congratulations.
something that I would really, really like to do in the future is to be able to play little nursery rhymes or play some songs and sing to her. So it's become a priority of mine, is to pick up the guitar and start to play it again.
That's great.
And I'll be
motivation.
playing, so I'll be playing Super Simple Songs. Have you heard of Super Simple Songs?
No.
Baby Shark and all of those.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I'll be playing those, and you'll be focusing on another genre like your Arctic Monkeys. Is there other genres of music that you like to listen to?
Yeah, I don't really have. Well, I have preferences, but I always, when people ask me what kind of music I like, I always say what quote Louis Armstrong, the jazz trumpeter, who said that there are only 2 types of music: there's good music and bad music. So I don't dismiss, or I don't reject any genre, except reggaeton, maybe. I think there's something for everyone, I guess. But but I think there is. I like a lot of. I'm really very interested in sort of the art of songwriting, and it doesn't have to be complicated, but I like a lot of sort of folk music and the sort of singer-songwriters. I mean, Bob Dylan is, for me, the greatest, but also John Prine, Townes Van Sant, Neil Young, another famous, Joni Mitchell. It's the craft of writing or creating a song that has something special. It might just be simple chords and only 3 or 4 chords. Even the lyrics may be quite simple, but there's magic in there. And to be able to, Ron Sexsmith, it's more modern. Well, it's not particularly modern, but a more modern example. So, Paul McCartney, they have this ability to, through melody and harmonies, and somehow they create some magic from something often quite simple. Sometimes it's more
Mhm.
complicated. So a lot of sort of folk country singer-songwriters, but also like a bit of jazz sometimes. Rock. When I was young, I was into grunge first because I was sort of 15 or 16 when Nirvana and Pearl Jam and
Oh, wow.
Alice in Chains, all that came out. And then indie, like British indie, I was really into Oasis. Was when I was about 17 or 18, Oasis exploded. They came on the scene, but also the Stone Roses, the Happy Mondays, the Charlatans, Suede, a lot of guitar, mostly guitar-based
Yeah.
rock. But the Brit
And have you
stuff,
been to see any of these bands live?
Yeah, well, I saw Oasis at Nebworth. They did a famous
Wow.
Nebworth gig. I think it was like
Yeah.
250,000, a quarter of a million people attended over 2 days. And then I saw them again in Madrid just before they split up the first time. But yeah, I've seen the Verve. The Verve were one of my favorite bands when I was young. And, when I was 17, I went to my first festival. Music festivals are huge in England now. They were, again, 30 years ago when I was 17, but not as big as they are now. So I went to the Reading Festival, which Neil Young played that. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, Soundgarden.
Oh, wow.
The Foo Fighters played their first ever gig there because obviously the drummer from the Foo Fighters, the singer of the Foo Fighters was the drummer of Nirvana.
The drummer in Nirvana, yeah.
Kurt Cobain had committed suicide the year before. So Dave Grohl started the Foo Fighters, and I thought I'll go and check them out. And it was incredible because they were playing one of the smaller stages, just a tent, and it was packed, heaving. And it was, when I think about it now, it's quite. I'm not a huge fan of the Foo Fighters, but to be there at that moment was special. I remember seeing Green Day. Again, I'm not a huge fan of Green Day now, but back 30 years ago when they first hit the scene, and I remember there's the Cambridge Junction, which is quite a small venue, and the band was selling the T-shirts. They were actually there selling the T-shirts. So I bought a T-shirt from the drummer, I think, of Green Day, and now they're these huge superstars that have been doing it for years. So yeah, I've seen quite a few interesting bands over the years. Recently, I haven't been to many concerts, but I'd like to get back into it because live music's special, I think.
It's definitely something special. My brother bought tickets for himself and I to go to see Blink 182 in Madrid. That was last year. Yeah. And again, it just brought back memories from my childhood because that was the anthem of my childhood.
Right.
With Blink 182. So
yeah, that's happening really more and more, isn't it? Those bands, sort of Britpop bands and indie bands from the 90s, and I mean Blink 182 maybe a little bit later, but they're sort of reforming and playing and selling out, playing festivals and selling out gigs. Yeah. I think it's the nostalgic aspect. People going back, singing along to these songs. Bands like, maybe they weren't the biggest bands at the time, but the Blue Tones or the Ocean Colour Scene, and people can relive their childhood or their youth with their kids. Sometimes they take their kids to the festivals and say, this is what I was listening to when I was your age. It's nice that these bands are still going and still managing to make a living out of it.
Definitely. And I think on a English learning side, listening to English music and having the lyrics, like some of the lyrics to these songs, and I'm sure, Ben, you'll be able to name a couple of songs, they're very philosophical. You're reading the lyrics and they're extremely deep. And there's a lot of great vocabulary and tenses that they use, and it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to be careful because, I mean, songs like Mr. Tambourine Man by Bob Dylan, you think it's a bit like Yellow Submarine. It's like, hey, Mr. Tambourine Man. But if you listen to the lyrics, it's poetry. It's beautiful. Poetry. It's amazing. And songs by like Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, very deep songs, very famous and nice songs. But for me, it's interesting you say that because Spanish music really helped me when I first moved to Spain. Mostly the pop music. It wasn't necessarily music I liked that much, but it was very catchy. And if you, and this is important, you have to sort of be proactive and think about, and this is in general when you're learning a language, pay attention. It's about paying attention. So I remember Alejandro Sanz had vale, a lo mejor me lo merezco, bueno, pero mi voz no está en venta, or something. So I remember that melody. It was played a lot on the radio at the time, and vale, a lo mejor, and I was thinking, what is that? A lo mejor me lo merezco. There's a lot of very short words there. It's quite difficult to say, but so he's saying, okay, maybe I deserve it. And you just analyzing what they're saying and the grammar and the vocabulary, because it's catchy, because the melody is stuck in your head. You're going to remember it better anyway. I mean, I've probably never said that sentence myself. Well, maybe I have. I don't know. But it's the idea of analyzing the grammar and getting sort of deep into it. And with a lot of like Billie Eilish, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of sort of more modern singers of English, or singers who sing in English. Catchy melodies that can really help you. It's an entertaining, a fun way of learning the language, I think.
And a really good way to practice your pronunciation as well. The lower levels, the A2, B1 kind of levels, they struggle with the rhythm in their voice, as I call it. So to actually learn the lyrics to a song and be able to string them together, because we don't realize that as we've grown up learning our mother tongue, we've only learned certain mouth positions to pronounce things. Whereas when you start to learn another language, like the R in Spanish, I find it very difficult to roll my R's. And it's purely because we haven't had that practice from birth. So singing along to a song, learning the lyrics to a song and singing it, it really helps train the mouth to pronounce things, pronounce things better.
For me, I hate it when people ask me the time in Spain. Someone said, "Tienes hora?" And if I look at my watch and it's 4:15, then I have to say it's 4:15. For me, it's very difficult. 4:15. It's not the rolling of the R, because I don't have a problem rolling the R, but it's when there's the R and a consonant, 4:15. It's still difficult. It's physical. It's something physical that obviously for Spanish speakers it's not a problem, but I've been speaking Spanish for over 22 years and I still struggle with 4:15. So I think you just have to accept you'll never be able to say it perfectly or like a Spanish speaker, but it doesn't matter that much as long as the person understands what I'm saying.
And I think that's key, is getting your message across, and as long as they can understand, and same in English. So this is our longest show that we've ever done, and Ben, I could speak to you for another half hour. I could pick your brains forever, but I'd like to give you the chance to obviously give a little bit of promotion about yourself, the products that you have and what you're doing, and your goal at the moment. And then we'll have to bring the show to an end. So Ben,
thank you very much.
The stage is yours.
Thank you. I mean, it's been fun. I was completely lost track of time, which is a good sign. So I'm sorry if it's gone on too long, but it's been fun. So I mean, as I said before, I focus on Cambridge exam preparation. So I have my YouTube videos tend to revolve around how to prepare for and pass either the B2 first, C1 advanced, or C2 proficiency Cambridge English exams. But I also have vocabulary videos for everyone, and some grammar videos. I have a grammar course, which again, I kind of had Cambridge exam preparation in mind when I created the grammar course, but grammar is grammar. So if you're struggling with grammar and you want to reach that advanced level, it's quite a big course that covers many very useful grammar areas that are difficult to learn from exercise books. I think online courses are particularly useful because you can repeat the videos as many times as you need. My courses don't expire, so once you enroll, once you purchase them, you can watch them as many times as you like. You can contact me if you need any help. But and I'm currently I'm making a vocabulary course. It's been taking me a while because I decided I wanted to build and release a vocabulary course, but I was thinking, how do you just make a vocabulary course? You just read the dictionary. So I finally came up with an idea, and it's to for advanced learners or people who want to really reach that advanced level, because vocabulary, it makes a big difference sort of from upper intermediate to advanced levels. So I'm focusing on vocabulary or lexical chunks. So I think at advanced levels, if it's not just about learning words, it's about learning chunks of vocabulary. So words that commonly go together, which includes phrasal verbs. I'll have a big section on phrasal verbs, collocations, binomials. So binomials are things like chalk and cheese, for example, two words that go together. They're like one piece or one chunk of vocabulary. You can't say cheese and chalk, for example. It has to be in a particular order, and it has a particular meaning. So that's what I've decided to do. So I've just started really. So it'll take me a couple of months to finish that. But that's the next thing, apart from the YouTube videos, which I'm going to continue to make every week or every 2 weeks. So yeah, if anyone is taking a Cambridge English exam or wants to improve their grammar, those courses are available now, and the vocabulary course is coming relatively soon. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself. But yeah.
And you can find all of Ben's courses, the link here, and it will be in the description as well. He's also on Instagram. You do some shorter form videos on Instagram and on TikTok. But I think the majority of people and our audience will probably know you from YouTube. So I mentioned this to Ben before the recording, that I actually found Ben because I was going to teach my first C2 class. And I just wanted to find some tips on how to prepare people for the C2 exam. And I know that your videos, Ben, are extremely accessible for teachers, because a lot of teachers, as you will know, they're not fully qualified, but they get thrown into an academy, they get given a C1, C2 class, and they go into panic mode or YouTube search mode, and they're more than likely going to find your videos. And anyone that has seen Ben's videos, Ben has this kind of calming charm. You're very calm when you speak. You speak a rhythm that's easy to understand. You're very laid back. Your videos are easy to understand as a native speaker, but also for people learning the language. You just have a way of communicating things with such ease, and it grabs the user's attention. And I know for myself and for my colleagues that your videos have helped them a lot as well. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. That's so nice of you to say that. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say that. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure having the chance to pick your brains on certain things and to add another episode to the can, as they say, with this podcast. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get some more guests on to do the same. And it'd be nice to get some of our previous guests on again. So I'm sure that we'll collaborate and do something again in the future.
Definitely, yeah. It really has been a pleasure, and congratulations on your podcast, because I think it's a fantastic idea and you do it really well. So yeah, it's been a pleasure and an honor, and I'll be happy to do something with you again, either on my platforms or on yours. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben.
Si disfrutaste de este episodio y quieres llevar tu inglés al siguiente nivel, te invitamos a descubrir nuestros cursos online en theway.es, diseñados para mejorar tu fluidez y confianza en situaciones reales. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a transformar su aprendizaje. Visita ahora theway.es y realiza nuestro test de nivel interactivo de manera gratuita. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen de MITHER cómodamente desde casa.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.